Ladies and gentlemen, we've all been there. Staring at that task we know needs to get done, but somehow we hesitate. The temptation to push it off just for a little while longer whispers in our ears. But let me tell you this, every second you give in, every moment you delay, you are choosing to step away from your potential. Today I want to talk about the power of forcing yourself to act, to push forward, even when every fiber of your being resists. Because it is not motivation that builds greatness, it is discipline. The first step in forcing yourself to get it done is to stop waiting for someone or something to rescue you. No one is coming to save you. You need to take ownership of your life. Procrastination may feel like a small thing, but in truth, it's a decision to stay where you are instead of moving forward. If you want something different, something better, then you must accept that it is entirely up to you to make it happen. Procrastination feels harmless in the moment. I'll get to it later, you tell yourself, but what does later really mean? It means you are borrowing time from your future self. The cost of inaction isn't just the task left undone, it's the opportunities you miss, the growth you forfeit, and the confidence you undermine. Every moment of delay is a moment stolen from the person you could become. Recognize that cost and let it push you into action. You don't have to conquer the entire mountain in one day. That's a trap, a reason many of us don't even begin. We look at the size of the task and it feels overwhelming. So break it down. Take one small step. It doesn't matter how small, what matters is that you start. Action creates momentum, and momentum makes the next step easier. Progress, no matter how tiny, is always better than standing still. Motivation is a fleeting emotion. It's unreliable, it comes and goes like the wind. If you wait for motivation to strike, you'll spend most of your life waiting. Discipline, on the other hand, is steadfast. It's the commitment to do what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel. Discipline doesn't ask if you're in the mood, it simply demands that you act. Cultivate discipline, and you'll find yourself achieving things that motivation alone could never sustain. Deadlines are not your enemy, they are your ally. Without structure, your mind will wander, and the task will feel endless. Set a deadline, one that challenges you but is achievable. When you give yourself a clear timeline, you create a sense of urgency. That urgency narrows your focus and forces your hand. The clock is ticking, and that's a good thing. Let it remind you that time is finite and action cannot wait forever. In a world full of distractions, focus is a superpower. If you want to get things done, you must remove the distractions that pull you away. Turn off the notifications. Close the unnecessary tabs. Carve out a space physically and mentally where you can focus. Even 30 minutes of deep, undisturbed work is more valuable than hours of scattered, half-hearted effort. Force yourself to focus, and you'll be amazed at how much you can accomplish in a short period. Let's be honest, doing the hard things is uncomfortable. It's far easier to scroll through your phone, to watch one more episode, to put it off for later. But here's the truth, growth only happens in discomfort. The task you're avoiding is likely the very thing that will push you closer to your goals. When you feel the resistance, lean into it. Force yourself to face the discomfort head-on. That's where the real rewards are waiting. And finally, when the work feels heavy, when you feel like quitting, take a moment to imagine the payoff. Picture yourself on the other side of that task. Feel the sense of accomplishment, the relief, the pride. Visualize how this effort is building the future you want. Let that image pull you forward. Remember, every task completed isn't just something off your to-do list, it's a brick in the foundation of your success. Ladies and gentlemen, life is not about waiting for the right moment or the perfect conditions. It's about deciding here and now to take action. Force yourself to act. Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. Because the world doesn't reward potential, it rewards execution. The first step in forcing yourself to get things done is taking full responsibility for your actions, your choices, and ultimately your life. This might sound simple, even obvious, but it's one of the hardest truths to fully accept. Many of us spend an extraordinary amount of time blaming external circumstances for why we aren't where we want to be. We point to the things we can't control, our environment, our past, or the people around us, and use them as excuses to justify why we haven't moved forward. But the harsh reality is that no one else is going to do the work for you. No one else is going to swoop in and fix your problems. The sooner you stop waiting for external factors to align perfectly, the sooner you'll realize that it's entirely up to you to make things happen. Blaming your circumstances is easy, but it also makes you powerless. If your lack of progress is always someone else's fault or a product of bad luck, then you've already surrendered your agency. But when you take responsibility, you regain control. You realize that while you might not have chosen your starting point, you always have a say in how you respond. Life is unfair, no one disputes that. Some people start with advantages, others with disadvantages. But if you let those realities define you, you've already lost. What matters more than your starting point is the direction you decide to take. Responsibility is not about guilt or self-blame, it's about empowerment. It's about recognizing that you have the ability to act, even if the conditions are less than ideal. This is where many people falter. They wait for motivation or inspiration, telling themselves they'll act when they feel ready. But readiness is a myth. There is no perfect moment to begin, no magical wave of energy that will propel you forward. If you want to achieve something, you must force yourself to act before you feel ready. This means accepting responsibility not just for the task at hand, but for your mindset as well. It means saying, I am in charge of my choices, even when I don't feel like making them. Taking responsibility also means being brutally honest with yourself. It's easy to tell yourself a story that lets you off the hook. You convince yourself that you'll start tomorrow, or that you work better under pressure, or that the task isn't as urgent as it seems. But deep down, you know these are lies you tell yourself to avoid discomfort. Facing that truth is hard. It forces you to confront your own weaknesses and failures. But it's also liberating, because it reminds you that you're not a passive victim of your circumstances. You have the power to choose differently. Ultimately, responsibility is about shifting your focus from what's outside your control to what is within it. You can't change the past, but you can change what you do next. You can't force others to help you, but you can help yourself. The question isn't whether life is fair, but whether you're willing to do what it takes regardless of the obstacles in front of you. Taking responsibility is the foundation of all progress. It's not about waiting for someone to give you permission to start. It's about realizing that permission was yours to give all along. Procrastination has an alluring, deceptive quality to it. In the moment, it feels harmless, a temporary escape, a reprieve from discomfort. You tell yourself, it's okay, I'll get to it later, but what we often fail to realize is that later is not an infinite resource. Every time you choose inaction, you are making a trade. You are exchanging the present moment for a fleeting sense of ease, at the expense of your future self. And while it might not feel significant at the time, those moments add up, forming a pattern that compounds over days, weeks, months, or even years. Inaction is not a neutral act, it is a decision with consequences. The cost of procrastination isn't just the time wasted, it's the opportunities missed. When you delay action, you aren't just postponing a task, you are pushing away the rewards, growth, and freedom that come from completing it. Each task you avoid creates a ripple effect. The project you don't start today becomes the skill you don't develop tomorrow. The skill you don't develop tomorrow becomes the opportunity you aren't prepared to seize next year. Life moves forward with or without you. And every moment of inaction widens the gap between where you are and where you could be. What feels like a small delay today may turn into years of stagnation if you allow it. The cost is not just external, it's internal, too. Procrastination erodes your confidence and trust in yourself. Every time you avoid something you know you should do, you are sending a message to your brain, I can't handle this. Over time, these repeated messages add up, chipping away at your sense of capability and creating a cycle of avoidance. The task remains undone, the pressure builds, and the idea of starting becomes even more intimidating. This self-sabotaging loop feeds itself, making it harder to break free the longer it persists. What started as a moment of hesitation can grow into a habit that controls you. Beyond the psychological cost, procrastination also creates unnecessary stress. The more you put something off, the heavier it feels. Tasks don't disappear when you ignore them, they linger, taking up mental space and draining your energy. The worry about what you haven't done often becomes more exhausting than the task itself. You carry the weight of avoidance everywhere you go, and it distracts you from fully engaging with the present moment. What could have been resolved quickly now hangs over you like a storm cloud, growing darker and more ominous with every passing day. The hardest part of recognizing the cost of inaction is admitting that the delay is your choice. It's easy to blame circumstances, distractions, or a lack of time. But the truth is, we often choose comfort over progress, even when we know the cost. The key is to confront this reality and let it serve as a wake-up call. When you understand that procrastination is stealing from your future, it becomes harder to justify. You see it for what it is, a thief, robbing you of your potential, your opportunities, and your peace of mind. When faced with a daunting task, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, as if the mountain in front of you is too steep to climb. You stare at the sheer size of it and wonder how you'll ever make progress. This is where many people stop before they even start. They get paralyzed, not because they're incapable, but because they're trying to envision the entire journey instead of taking the first step. What they fail to realize is that momentum doesn't come from thinking about the destination, it comes from action, no matter how small. Even the smallest step forward can set something powerful into motion. Progress isn't always about giant leaps or groundbreaking achievements. More often, it's the result of consistent, incremental steps that build upon each other over time. Starting small doesn't mean you're settling for less, it means you're building the foundation for something greater. The beauty of small actions is that they lower the barrier to entry. Instead of focusing on how far you have to go, you focus on what you can do right now. Maybe it's writing the first sentence of a report, making a single phone call, or even organizing your workspace. These small actions might seem insignificant, but they carry immense power because they create movement. And once you're in motion, it's easier to keep going. Small progress matters because it creates a psychological shift. When you accomplish even a tiny part of a larger task, you feel a sense of achievement. That feeling reinforces your belief that you're capable, and it encourages you to take the next step. It's like a chain reaction. One small success leads to another, and before you know it, you've built momentum. This is how big projects get done, not all at once, but piece by piece, step by step. Momentum also helps you overcome resistance. Resistance is strongest at the beginning. It's the voice in your head that says, this is too hard, or you're not ready, but when you force yourself to take that first small step, you weaken the grip of resistance. You prove to yourself that the task isn't as impossible as it seemed. Each small step chips away at the fear and hesitation, making it easier to keep going. The longer you stay in motion, the less power resistance has over you. What's remarkable about small progress is how it compounds over time. It's easy to underestimate the impact of small actions because their effects aren't always immediate. But when repeated consistently, these actions accumulate, leading to significant results. Think of it like planting seeds. On their own, a single seed might not seem like much, but with time and care, it grows into something remarkable. The same principle applies to progress. Each small step you take is a seed that contributes to the bigger picture. Ultimately, progress isn't about perfection or speed, it's about consistency. The goal isn't to conquer everything at once, it's to keep moving, no matter how slowly. Even if you stumble or falter, the fact that you're moving forward means you're still ahead of where you were yesterday. Small progress isn't just valuable, it's essential. It's the foundation upon which all success is built. By focusing on what you can do in the moment, rather than being paralyzed by the enormity of the task, you allow yourself to move forward, one small but significant step at a time. Relying on motivation is one of the biggest traps people fall into when trying to achieve their goals. Motivation feels exciting and energizing, it's that spark that makes you want to take action. But here's the problem: motivation is unreliable. It's fleeting, unpredictable, and inconsistent. It comes in waves, often appearing when you least need it and disappearing the moment things get tough. You might wake up one morning feeling inspired and ready to tackle the world, but by midday that energy fades. If you base your ability to act on whether or not you feel motivated, you'll spend more time waiting for the right feeling than actually accomplishing anything meaningful. Discipline, on the other hand, doesn't ask how you feel. It doesn't care if you're tired, unmotivated, or not in the mood. Discipline is the act of doing what needs to be done, regardless of whether you want to do it. It's not glamorous or exciting, but it's reliable. While motivation might light the fire, discipline is what keeps it burning. Discipline is the framework that allows you to push through resistance, fatigue, or doubt. It's about creating habits and routines that make action automatic, even when you're not feeling particularly inspired. The reason discipline is so powerful is that it shifts your focus away from emotions and toward commitment. Emotions are fickle, they change with the weather, your mood, or a random comment someone makes. But commitment is steady. When you're disciplined, you act not because you feel like it, but because you've decided that this is what you're going to do. It's a choice that overrides excuses, procrastination, and distractions. You don't negotiate with yourself. You don't give yourself the option to delay or avoid the task. You simply act. Building discipline requires practice. It's not something you wake up with one day, it's something you develop over time through repeated effort. Start small. Commit to one simple, non-negotiable action each day, whether it's writing for 10 minutes, exercising for 20 minutes, or reading a single chapter of a book. The size of the action doesn't matter as much as the consistency. What matters is that you show up day after day, proving to yourself that you can follow through. Each time you honor your commitment, you strengthen your discipline. And over time, these small acts of discipline compound, leading to bigger and bigger achievements. One of the hardest parts of discipline is pushing through discomfort. There will be times when everything in you wants to stop. Your mind will come up with 100 reasons why it's okay to quit. You're tired, you've done enough, you can do it tomorrow. But discipline demands that you ignore those voices. It's about training yourself to act, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient. This is where growth happens, not in the moments when it's easy, but in the moments when it's hard. Ultimately, discipline is what separates those who achieve their goals from those who only dream about them. It's not talent, luck, or motivation that determines success. It's the ability to act consistently, regardless of how you feel. Motivation might get you started, but discipline is what keeps you going. And it's the key to getting things done, even when inspiration is nowhere to be found. Deadlines are often viewed as sources of stress, looming over us and creating anxiety about finishing on time. But if we look closer, we realize that deadlines are not obstacles, they're tools. They impose structure on the chaos of daily life and provide us with the necessary pressure to focus and act. Without them, tasks can drift endlessly, and even the most important goals can fade into the background of procrastination. Deadlines are not the enemy, they are the guideposts that remind us of the finite nature of time and the importance of acting with urgency. One of the reasons people struggle with productivity is the illusion of unlimited time. When a task has no specific deadline, it feels like it can always be pushed off to another day. Without a sense of urgency, there's no natural incentive to prioritize action. This is why self-imposed deadlines are so critical. They force you to confront the reality that time is limited, and that every moment of inaction is a moment lost. Deadlines create a sense of pressure, not the kind of paralyzing pressure that makes you freeze, but the productive kind that gives your efforts focus and clarity. They sharpen your attention and direct your energy, eliminating the temptation to waste time on distractions. The beauty of deadlines is that they turn abstract ideas into concrete objectives. A goal like write a book or start a business can feel overwhelming because it's so broad and undefined. But when you set a deadline, finish the first chapter by the end of the week, or create a business plan by the end of the month, the task suddenly feels more manageable. Deadlines break big goals into smaller, actionable steps, and they give you a timeline to work within. Without this kind of structure, it's easy to fall into the trap of endless planning and thinking without ever actually doing. The power of deadlines isn't just about time, it's about accountability. When you set a clear deadline for yourself and commit to it, you create a contract with your future self. You're no longer just drifting through your days, waiting for the perfect moment to start. Instead, you're working with intention, knowing that the clock is ticking. And when you share your deadlines with others, the accountability becomes even stronger. Suddenly, it's not just about meeting your own expectations, it's about following through on a promise you've made to someone else. Deadlines also teach you to prioritize. When you know something needs to be done by a specific time, you're forced to focus on what truly matters and cut out the noise. You stop overthinking, stop worrying about perfection, and start making progress. Deadlines remind you that done is often better than perfect. The pressure to meet them can push you to act decisively, even when you don't feel fully ready, and that action often leads to unexpected growth and success. While deadlines can be intimidating, they are ultimately a form of freedom. They help you organize your time, push past procrastination, and turn vague intentions into tangible results. By setting clear deadlines and respecting them, you give yourself the structure and urgency needed to accomplish things you might otherwise never start. Time will pass regardless of what you do, but deadlines ensure that the passing time is filled with purpose and progress. The fear of failure is one of the most paralyzing emotions we can experience. It stops us before we even begin, whispering in our ear that we might embarrass ourselves, make a mistake, or prove that we're not as capable as we hoped. But this fear, while powerful, is ultimately a self-imposed prison. It keeps us safe, yes, but also stagnant. Growth, progress, and success all require risk, and risk inherently comes with the possibility of failure. The only way to move forward is to redefine what failure means and to stop seeing it as a final destination. but rather as an essential and valuable part of the journey. Failure is not the opposite of success, it is a part of it. Every successful person you admire has failed repeatedly. In fact, the most successful people have often failed more times than most others have even tried. Failure is not a sign that you are incapable or inadequate, it is proof that you are taking action. It's evidence that you are stepping out of your comfort zone, challenging yourself, and striving towards something meaningful. If you never fail, it likely means you are playing it safe, staying within your limits, and avoiding any situation that could push you to grow. One of the most important shifts in mindset is learning to view failure as feedback. When something doesn't go as planned, it's not the end of the road, it's information. It's an opportunity to learn what doesn't work, to refine your approach, and to get one step closer to figuring out what does work. Each failure holds a lesson, but only if you're willing to look for it. When you stop taking failure personally and start seeing it as a valuable teacher, it loses its power to paralyze you. Instead of avoiding it, you begin to embrace it as a necessary part of the process. The fear of failure often comes from attaching your self-worth to the outcome of your actions. You tell yourself that if you fail, it means you're not good enough, smart enough, or talented enough. But your worth is not defined by your successes or failures, it's defined by your willingness to keep showing up. Failure doesn't diminish you as a person, it's simply an experience, a moment in time, not a permanent state of being. The more you detach your identity from the outcome, the freer you become to take risks and experiment. Ironically, the fear of failure often leads to a worse outcome than failure itself. When you let fear control you, you stay stuck in inaction, never giving yourself the chance to succeed. But when you confront that fear and act anyway, you gain experience, resilience, and strength, even if the initial outcome isn't what you hope for. Failure builds character in a way that comfort and safety never can. It teaches you perseverance, adaptability, and courage. To force yourself to get things done, you must embrace the possibility of failure, not avoid it. Accept that you will make mistakes, stumble, and face setbacks. These moments are not signs that you should stop, they are signs that you're on the right track. Every failure is a stepping stone, a piece of the puzzle that brings you closer to your goals. By reframing failure as an inevitable and valuable part of growth, you liberate yourself from the fear that holds you back and open the door to endless possibilities. One of the most insidious barriers to productivity and progress is the obsession with perfection. On the surface, striving for perfection can seem like a positive trait. After all, who wouldn't want their work to be flawless, their goals executed with absolute precision? But perfectionism is often a trap disguised as virtue. It creates an impossible standard that no one can consistently meet, and in doing so, it paralyzes you. You spend so much time worrying about doing things perfectly that you never actually finish, or worse, you never even start. The pursuit of perfection can become an excuse for inaction, a mask for fear, and a way to avoid the discomfort of confronting your own imperfections. The truth is, perfection is an illusion. There is no such thing as a perfect project, a perfect decision, or a perfect moment to act. Waiting for perfection is just another form of procrastination. It gives you a false sense of safety, a reason to delay. You tell yourself, I'll start when I have everything figured out, or I'll finish once it's just right. But that day never comes. There will always be something you feel could be improved, something that isn't quite ready. If you continue to chase perfection, you'll find yourself stuck in a cycle of endless tweaking, refining, and second-guessing. Meanwhile, the opportunity to make real progress slips through your fingers. Progress, on the other hand, doesn't require perfection, it requires action. It demands that you let go of the need for everything to be flawless and focus instead on moving forward. Getting something done, even if it's not perfect, is infinitely more valuable than doing nothing at all. A completed project, even with its flaws, has the potential to create impact, to teach you something, or to open doors to new opportunities. But an unfinished project, no matter how much potential it has, will never see the light of day. The key to overcoming the paralysis of perfectionism is to shift your focus from the outcome to the process. Instead of obsessing over whether your work will meet some arbitrary standard, focus on taking consistent, meaningful steps toward completion. Allow yourself to make mistakes, to produce something that might not be your best work, because even imperfection is a form of progress. Each imperfect effort is a stepping stone, a chance to learn, grow, and improve. The act of finishing, no matter how imperfectly, builds confidence and momentum, which in turn makes it easier to tackle the next task. Another way to combat perfectionism is to set realistic expectations. Recognize that not every task or goal requires your absolute best effort. Some things simply need to be done, not perfected. By prioritizing completion over perfection, you free yourself from the mental burden of trying to meet impossible standards. You also give yourself permission to revise, improve, and iterate later. Perfection is not a prerequisite for success. It's often the result of repeated effort over time. Ultimately, perfectionism is about control, the desire to avoid criticism, failure, or vulnerability by ensuring everything is flawless. But in trying to control every outcome, you risk losing the very thing you're striving for progress. By letting go of perfectionism, you give yourself the freedom to act, to create, and to move forward. Done is better than perfect. And in the act of finishing, you discover that imperfection is not a flaw, it's a feature of growth. Every completed effort, no matter how imperfect, brings you closer to where you want to be. Your environment plays an undeniable role in shaping your behavior, decisions, and ultimately your ability to achieve your goals. Often we underestimate just how much influence our surroundings have on our productivity and focus. We like to believe that willpower alone is enough to push us through distractions and temptations, but the truth is that even the strongest willpower can falter in an environment that doesn't support our goals. When your surroundings are cluttered, chaotic, or filled with distractions, it becomes significantly harder to stay on track. The space around you either acts as a tool that facilitates progress or as a barrier that holds you back. The first step to creating a conducive environment is to eliminate distractions. This might seem obvious, but many people don't realize how much their surroundings are working against them. A cluttered desk, notifications pinging on your phone, or the pull of social media can all sap your focus and derail your momentum. Every time you stop to check your phone or respond to an unnecessary distraction, you lose valuable time and mental energy. These interruptions don't just break your concentration, they make it harder to re-enter a state of deep focus. By removing distractions from your environment, you're not just simplifying your space, you're simplifying your mind. Creating an environment that supports productivity is also about intentional design. Your workspace should align with your goals and make it easier for you to do the work that matters most. This means setting up systems that reduce friction. For example, if your goal is to write, make sure your computer is ready, your notes are accessible, and your desk is free of clutter. If your goal is to exercise, keep your workout gear in plain sight so it's a constant reminder. The fewer obstacles you have to overcome to start working, the more likely you are to actually do it. An optimized environment removes excuses and creates momentum. But it's not just about physical space. Your environment includes the people around you as well. The attitudes, habits, and energy of those in your circle can either lift you up or drag you down. If you're constantly surrounded by negativity, doubt, or people who don't support your goals, it can be incredibly draining. On the other hand, being around motivated, disciplined, and supportive individuals can inspire you to do better and push harder. Your social environment is just as important as your physical one, and it's worth taking the time to evaluate whether the people in your life align with the person you want to become. Small changes to your environment can have a significant impact. Something as simple as cleaning your workspace, turning off notifications, or adding a visual reminder of your goals can make a noticeable difference. These changes send a message to your brain. This is a space for focus and productivity. Over time, your environment begins to reinforce the habits you're trying to build, making it easier to stay consistent. In the end, your environment is a reflection of your priorities. If your surroundings are chaotic, it's likely that your actions will feel scattered and unfocused. But if you take the time to create a space that supports your goals, you set yourself up for success. An intentional environment doesn't guarantee instant results, but it removes unnecessary barriers and provides the clarity you need to focus on what really matters. In the end, getting things done isn't about waiting for the perfect moment or relying on bursts of motivation. It's about creating a mindset and environment that force you to act, regardless of how you feel in the moment. You must recognize that the path to success isn't paved with perfection or comfort, but with consistent effort, discipline, and the willingness to face failure head-on. You have to eliminate distractions, set clear deadlines, and focus on taking small steps toward progress. You need to create habits that push you to act even when motivation is absent, and you must embrace the uncomfortable, knowing that growth happens in those moments of discomfort. When you stop letting fear of failure or perfectionism dictate your actions, you free yourself to do the work that matters. You allow your environment to support your goals instead of hindering them. And in doing so, you build the momentum necessary to keep moving forward. Ultimately, the key to getting things done is to recognize that action is the real driver of success, not waiting for motivation, but forcing yourself to move, no matter how small the steps. Every completed task, no matter how imperfect, brings you closer to where you want to be. So make the commitment, take the first step, and keep moving forward, because nothing gets done until you do.